Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Larsen, and this is my World Religions Project about the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism versus the Ten Commandments of Christianity. So, let's get started. First, we're going to talk about the Four Noble Truths. Now, you're probably wondering, what are the Four Noble Truths? And I'm going to tell you that the Four Noble Truths are the Four Noble Truths are regarded as a central doctrine of the Buddhist tradition and are said to provide a conceptual framework for all of Buddhist thought. These four truths explain the nature of dukkha, also known as suffering, its causes, its cessation, and the path leading to its cessation. So, specifically, the Four Noble Truths are: the first truth is the truth of dukkha, or suffering, anxiety, and unsatisfactoriness. The second truth is the origin of dukkha. The third truth is the truth of cessation of dukkha. The fourth truth is the path leading to the cessation of dukkha. Now, you probably don't know exactly what each of these means, so I'm going to get into it a little bit with you guys. Let's start with the first truth. Now, the first noble truth is the truth of dukkha. Within Buddhist tradition, the term dukkha is commonly explained according to three different patterns or categories. The dukkha of ordinary suffering, which is the obvious physical and mental suffering associated with birth, growing old, illness, and dying. Then there's the dukkha produced by change, the anxiety or stress of trying to hold on to things that are constantly changing. Then there's the dukkha of conditioned states, a basic unsatisfactoriness pervading all forms of existence due to the fact that all forms of life are changing. That is basically what is the first dukkha. Now we're going to have some insights here on the first dukkha. And there's three basic insights on the first noble truth. And it's that there is suffering. We need to understand that there is suffering. You know, the ignorant person is going to say, I'm suffering, I don't want to suffer, so I meditate, I go on retreats to get out of suffering, but I'm still suffering and I don't want to. You ask the questions, how can I get out of suffering? What can I do to get rid of it? But that is not the first noble truth. It's not, I am suffering, I want to end it. The insight is, you have to realize that there is suffering. Now, the second insight is that suffering should be understood. It's that the dukkha is something to understand. One should understand dukkha, not simply try to get rid of it. Understanding means to really accept the suffering, stand under or embrace it, rather than to react to it. Without any form of suffering, physical or mental, we usually just react. But with understanding, we can really look at suffering, really accept it, hold it, and embrace it. So that way, the second aspect of the first noble truth is that we should understand suffering. Now, the third aspect of the first noble truth is suffering has been understood. When you actually have practiced with suffering, looking at it, accepting it, knowing it, and letting it be the way that it is, then there is the third aspect, which suffering has been understood, or dukkha has been understood. That ends the first noble truth. So let's head on to the second noble truth, which is the origin of dukkha. Now, within the context of the Four Noble Truths of dukkha, it's commonly explained as conditioned by ignorance. This craving runs out of three channels. The craving for the sense of pleasure. This is craving for sense objects which provide pleasant feelings or sensory pleasures. Then there's the craving to be. This is something to unite with an experience. This includes cravings to be solid and ongoing, to be a being that has a past and a future, and a craving to prevail and dominate over all others. Then there's the craving not to be. This is a craving to not experience the world and to be nothing, a wish to be separated from painful things. Another common explanation presents the cause of dukkha as a disturbing emotion rooted in ignorance. In this text, it is common to identify three root disturbing emotions called the three poisons as root to cause suffering or dukkha. These three poisons are ignorance, which is the misunderstanding of nature or reality, bewilderment. There's attachment, which is the attachment to a pleasurable experience, and aversion, which is a fear of getting what we don't want or not getting what we want to do. So that is the second truth. We're going to go back. We're going to get some more insights here on the second noble truth. And the three insights is that there is origin of suffering, which is attachment to desire. We emphasize contemplating with the three aspects of desire, and that we need to kind of avoid this desire. The second insight of the noble truth is that desire, it should be let go. The more we contemplate and investigate grasping, the more insight arises. Desire should be let go of. And the third insight is that desire, it finally has been let go. You have officially been like, you know what, I have no desires. When we actually know letting go, it's not a theoretical letting go, but a direct insight. Letting go has been accomplished. This is what practice is all about. We go through the practice of understanding what letting go really is, and we finally have that third insight of the second noble truth. With that concludes the second noble truth. We're going to move on to the third noble truth. The third noble truth is the cessation of dukkha. The third noble truth is the cessation of dukkha. Already said that, blah. The cessation refers to the cessation of suffering and causes of suffering. It is the cessation of unsatisfactory experiences and their causes in such a way that they can no longer occur again. It's the removal, the final absence, the cessation of those things, their non-arising. Cessation is the goal of one Buddhist spiritual practice. According to Buddhist point of view, once we have developed a genuine understanding of the cause of suffering, such as craving and ignorance, then we can completely eradicate these causes, thus being free from suffering. Cessation is often equated with nirvana, which can be described as the state of being in cessation, or the event or process of cessation. A temporary state of nirvana can be said to occur when the causes of suffering have ceased in our mind. Now we're going to head over and we're going to talk about the three insights of the third noble truth. And the first one is that there is cessation of suffering, or dukkha. All that is subject to arising is subject to ceasing. Apply it to life in general and to your own experience. Then you will understand. Just know, beginning and contemplate how things are. The sensory realm is all about rising and ceasing, beginning and ending. There can be perfect understanding in this lifetime. The second insight is that cessation of dukkha, it should be realized. And the third insight of the third noble truth is that cessation of dukkha has been realized. So basically, you want to understand that there is suffering and cessation of it, and then the second is that you need to realize that it exists, and then the third one is once you have realized it exists. Now we're going to move on to the fourth noble truth, which is probably one of the most important ones. It's to find the path of cessation of dukkha. This is also known as the Noble Eightfold Path and is considered to be the essence of Buddhist practice. The Eightfold Path consists of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. While the first three truths are primarily concerned with understanding the nature of dukkha, suffering, anxiety, stress, and its causes, the fourth truth presents a practical method for overcoming dukkha, or suffering. The path consists of a set of 8 interconnected factors or conditions that, when developed together, lead to the cessation of dukkha. Described as a mandala of interconnected factors that support and moderate each other. Thus, the 8 items on the path are not to be understood as stages in which each stage is completed before moving on to the next, rather that they be understood as 8 significant dimensions of one's behavior, mental, spoken, and bodily, that operate in dependence of one another. Taken together, they define a complete path or way of living. Now we're going to go to the 3 insights about the fourth noble truth. It's that there is a path to the cessation of suffering. This path should be cultivated, should be actualized, and that this path should be realized, that this is a possible thing that you can do. Next, that ends our talk on dukkha and suffering. We're going to move on now to the 10 Commandments. And what are the 10 Commandments, you ask? Well, here they are right in front of me. We have number 1, you shall not have no other gods before me. Number 2, you shall not make idols. Number 3, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Number 5, honor your father and your mother. Number 6, you shall not murder. Number 7, you shall not commit adultery. Number 8, you shall not steal. Number 9, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbors. And 10, you shall not covet. Now I ask the question of what do these mean, and how do they compare to the Four Noble Truths? The Four Noble Truths seem to be like a pathway of living and how to live a successful life. And I was just, I was wondering what do these mean to students in our area? So I emailed a couple students. I said, what do you think the 10 Commandments mean? Are they like a guideline or what? So I would quote here by Kendra Stokey. She says, I believe that is a moral code that we must follow, but thanks to God's grace, if and when we stumble, he will still love us and protect us. So in essence, Kendra thinks that, it's a moral code, but, if we slip up, we are saved by God and his almighty grace to allow us, to mess up, and that he's going to say, you know what, I understand, you're going to mess up and I forgive you. I also asked Shay Sutherland, and she says, I think the 10 Commandments were put there by God as guidelines to follow so that the kingdom on earth would not be overtaken by sin. I do not think it's wrong to intentionally sin, but God will forgive them if you truly want to be forgiven. Shay pretty much thinks the same exact thing. They're kind of guidelines, but it's a crazy thing that we have here on earth. We have these rules and these guidelines, and when comparing the 10 Commandments to the Four Noble Truths, I believe that the Four Noble Truths reign triumph over the 10 Commandments, because as a Buddhist, you have to live by these Four Noble Truths, and you have to understand that it is a way of life and that you have to do this. However, the 10 Commandments, as you see, most Christians, I believe, would take these not as literal laws that you have to follow, and if you don't, you're kind of screwed, but as they're like moral guidelines, like, hey, you should probably do this if you want to get into heaven or if you want to be a moral person. Well, guys, that concludes my presentation. I'd just like to thank you for coming out, for listening to me. As always, this is Andrew Larsen signing off. Until next time, have a good day, guys.